Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Already the final segment of today's Price of Business. And I have my good friend on, Chris Kidd. He's with Chris Kidd Enterprises, helping individuals really take their financial lives to the next level. And love bringing your stories, your insight, your interviews to our audience. It's a lot of fun here on The Price of Business. His website is Chris Kidd. That's KIDD.com. Chris, what do you got? First of all, a little more about what you guys do there at Chris Kidd Enterprises, and then your guest today.
Well, I'm a financial coach, and really, it all stems from the family unit. I don't like seeing families that are broken up, and a lot of that kind of stems from financial troubles. And that's kind of how I got into this. And I decided, well, if I can do something to help families, decrease the financial stress and, be able to get out of debt and handle their money better and, invest wisely and learn how to manage it and stay on top of things and understand what's going on with their money, I can help save a lot of families. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yep, no question about it, and you do a great job. You're a guest today.
I've got a really cool guest today. I think there's going to be a lot of listeners that are going to enjoy this. And my guest today is Carl Francis from the NFL Players Association. He's the communications director over there. And it's great to have you join us today, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Kind of that's one of those things that we hear constantly, the Players Association, when we hear news stories, particularly around labor disputes and that type of thing. But kind of give us the elevator speech, if you would, of what the association is all about.
I mean, basically, we're the front porch for players when it comes to their rights, working conditions, and health and safety, and we protect those every day through our services. And we're just the union for the players, basically. So we've been in business since 1956. And so we've been here ever since, protecting and fighting for those rights. We just had our most recent labor dispute in 2011 during the lockout. And so we keep trudging along.
Very good. Go ahead, Chris.
Carl, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that the NFLPA does for players, and I know y'all represent players in like disputes and stuff that we talked about, and any kind of lawsuit type things. But talk about some other things as far as preparing players like to go on after their careers are over and things like that. What are some different things that the NFLPA is involved in? Well,
we have quite a few programs. I know we're talking about the financial end, and I want to really dive into that because it means a lot to us. And we understand that many of our players are somewhat different than the normal college graduate who gets a job and earns his way and kind of builds his or her career along the way. We're talking about young people who are anywhere the average of 22 to 23 years old. They come in the thousands and sometimes millions of dollars, and sometimes many of them are first-time generation young people. And so what we try to do is start early. We have a program called Pipeline to the Pros, which we go to all the colleges and universities around the country. And we talk about, the whole process of becoming an NFL player. And a part of that conversation is financial management, financial planning. Now, we don't go through a whole course in that area, but we do touch on it to understand the process of, okay, let's hypothetically say that you're a third-round draft choice. When you really get down to the nuts and bolts after you've paid all of your expenses, agent fees, purchasing a car, taking care of friends and family, taxes, what is your true amount? And every time we go through that exercise, all the kids are just blown away by how little money they have left over. So that gives them a first-hand look of just because a contract says $400,000 doesn't mean you're going to end with that amount at the end of the day. Then we take them through the combine where we talk about our business, what we do as an organization, and we start discussing the programs we have in place, such as financial finance. We have a young lady in our office who's the senior director of player affairs and development, and in her department, she manages the financial advisors program, which we've had here in the Players Association for 15 years. And that program is geared around education, education and information on the process of managing your wealth. So do we give them advice on what stocks to invest in? Do we give them business advice? Absolutely not. We don't. What we try to do is expose them to career counselors and others who can help them understand the fundamentals of their money, such as purchasing a house, some of the things that you should consider. Purchasing a car, should you lease versus purchase a car? I mean, all the different fundamental elements of just managing your money every day are some of the challenges these young people face coming into our business. And if you don't catch it early, it'll really fester every year of their career.
Yeah.
And so you really, really got to manage it along the way.
So I wanted to ask you about the the concussion case and the dealings with that, the negotiation that was done between the players and the league, and then what ultimately led to a decision that the judge wasn't even happy with, but the league but the players were. I found that extraordinary. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I really don't want to talk about that, to be honest with you, because we don't want a party to that case at all. So we were on the outside, so I really don't have a lot of information, and in terms of just responding to how the players felt versus how the league felt. So I really don't have a lot of information to add to that.
Okay, well, that's a fair question. Your question, Chris?
Well,
Or
Carl,
answer, rather.
in addition to some of the things that y'all are doing, what are some things that you see that either the Players Association or the NFL in general could do to get involved as far as preparing these young athletes for their future, after sports is over, a little bit better? I know a lot of times, the statistics show that the most professional athletes, on any sport, or end up in a financial mess after, within a few years, and the NFL is certainly one of the highest, and I've heard, NFL stands for not for long. From some players. So what are some things that could be done to prepare them a little bit better for life after the sports and everything?
Well, let's talk about the things we are doing, because I think we've invested a lot in this area to ensure that players have an option and they're educated on their options once they finish the game. We have a former players department which engages the active players, let me say this, former players, when they leave the game with reconnection to the game. There's a fraternity that's missed. There's a void that's missed when a player retires, of being out of the locker room. And many occasions, when they're out of the locker room, they don't have that connection to something that says you're part of a exclusive group, because you've played football your whole life, and that's been an exclusive group from high school to college to pros. One of the things that we try to do is, during the course of their career, is pepper them with options, pepper them with second alternatives, pepper them with thinking outside the box and being connected to life outside of football, which is sometimes tough. And we usually start with players' general interest. We have a lot of players that's doing things in the community. They're building hospitals. They're giving back to young people. They do football camps. They do a number of different things that are meaningful to them. And what we try to do is connect them to meaningful things that they can take and build upon to create either a business or just create some sort of connection to who they want to be once they finish playing football.
Yeah.
Now, we have a program once they're playing. So there are a lot of internships that we have during the season, a lot of programs. We have broadcast boot camp. We have business school programs. If you want to open a franchise, there are programs. If you want to get into the music business, there's so many elements of development, professional development available for players, that it allows them to have a functional base of their next step once they leave. So therefore, you can enter the internship world you can get experience. We have a program here called the Externship. Over 2 weeks, young lady, Leslie Satchel, Director of Player Development, that she selects 6 companies. The companies could be Under Armour, it could be our organization, it could be AT&T, it could be a university, where players are situated in different companies for over 2 weeks and learn the everyday practical experience of business, whether it's in public relations, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in coaching, whether in every industry there are players that are situated in these different companies, and then after that 2 weeks, they have to present a project to talk about their experience, to talk about what they've learned, and do a case study on a particular issue with that company. So, I mean, I can go on in a number of different programs that we have available. Even once they leave the game, they go through like a detox program where we have a organization called the Trust. The Trust is there to really work with them in a holistic viewpoint, to really break down every element of their life.
Yeah.
Number one, they go to a full brain and body evaluation. Just taking a look at their body from a whole, from the time they play their first game to the last. Are there any long lingering injuries that you need to take care of? What's your step? What are your interests? What are your options? The next step. I mean, just every element of giving them a transitional process to acclimate them to the real world so they can feel comfortable about becoming a radio host. They can feel comfortable about becoming a high school administrator or a football coach or being on television. I mean, there's so many different elements of it. So, and then they're back in that locker room experience with the former players, coming back for a former players convention, engaging with former teammates, just being a part of a family again, I think is really key. And what we try to have them understand that once you begin your career as an NFL player, then you'll end it with us because we never disconnect you from who we are as a union.
Carl, you're
always a union.
You have to forgive me. I got to wrap it up at that point. We went a little over. In fact, Carl Francis, he is with the NFL Player Association, NFLPA.com, and make sure you check him out. And Chris, your final thought before we let you both go. Chris Kidd, KIDD.com.
It's a great interview, and I definitely like seeing stuff like that as far as being able to equip athletes once they're finished playing and stuff. I think it was some really good stuff.
Yeah, excellent. It's very important to help them make that transition. It was difficult getting that transition into pro sports, probably even more difficult getting them out. So it's great to see what's happening there.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And like Carl kind of mentioned, they're doing stuff to kind of salt the oats.
There you go. All right. When we come back tomorrow, we're going to have much more for you. We want to remind you the show continues 24/7 at priceofbusiness.com. And you've been listening to The Price of Business.